one that would crucify Jesus, after the one who was in charge of the rule of law said, "I don't see anything wrong with him," and then proceeds to punish him for something he was not guilty of. What is truth? That's the question that Pilate poses to Jesus. This is an ironic question, isn't it? To have the embodiment of truth standing in front of you and asking, what is truth? With the youth, we have been studying logic. We're trying to make these youths more logical. And it is a challenge. No, I'm just kidding, guys. They are very smart. They always keep me on my toes. 300 years before Jesus, there was a man named Aristotle, and he went to the school of Plato, and he coined these ideas, the laws of logic. He coined 3. I think we are up to 4 now. The law of identity, the law of excluded middle, the law of non-contradiction, and the law of sufficient reason. A thing is, if you identify it, a thing is because it is. I am Evan, and that's what I am. The law of non-contradiction, I am a person. I cannot both be a person and not be a person at the same time. I just am. That's how it is. Is that true? That's true. And we know it's true. There's a law of excluded middle, which means I cannot be what I am and be something kind of in between a person and not a person. That doesn't exist. I am not that. I am what I am. And then there has to be a sufficient cause or sufficient reason for everything that exists. These are philosophical questions. Why do you exist? How do you exist? You may use science to prove that and say, well, from what we've observed, and you can go all the way back to what is observable, but eventually you have to ask the philosophical question, how? Where did that come from? When did that start? Why? And you get to these questions, and there has to be something to ground your logic. You have to connect it to something where you say, that's as far as I can go with this question. If you say, well, it all happened one day, it just all happened. And you say, okay, well, how did that happen? What caused that? Well, I don't know that, but I do know that it all happened. You have not yet grounded your logic. You haven't gone all the way. There's still another step. I'm a Christian. I ground my logic with the existence of God. God is the answer to these deep philosophical questions. He is the end. He's also the beginning. And He is the reason why I can reason. Reason is important. But when you abandon reason, you get a culture that can sacrifice the Son of God because of their hatred, because of their moral relativism. I want you to put yourself in Pilate's shoes for a moment. Some things about Pilate. He had some familiar beliefs. In his time, there was something called the Pax Romana. This was the peace of Rome, or Roman peace. This was his job. His job was to maintain the Pax Romana, to maintain peace among the people around him. So when he sees a mob of religious zealots clamoring and shouting for the death of what he views as an innocent man, his morality is going to be challenged by his loyalty to Rome, by his loyalty to keeping the peace of Rome. There was also another idea in Rome. We would call this the might makes right. We call it a fallacy. But they would say, vae victis, which meant Woe to the vanquished. If you were weak enough to be destroyed, then maybe the one who was stronger had the moral upper hand. Now, we know that this, morally, we would say, well, that's not right. Just because you have the might and the power to do something does not mean that it is right or good to do. We can understand this. However, how it is borne out in people's lives, how they actually act, usually looks something like this. Today, we have something called moral relativism. Jesus highlighted the truth. I am come that I should bear witness to the truth. Jesus did not say, I am here to bear witness of my truth. It's my truth. Have you ever heard that? Well, somebody laughed. This is my truth. This is my truth. And if I believe that it is true, I just feel like, and that's usually as far as it goes, this is my truth. Your truth is valid because your emotions are valid, and we care very much about the way that you feel. But what I believe also is true because I too am important. And so you have this my truth and your truth. Jesus would never conflate these ideas. The idea of the truth was very important to him. There can be one and only logical truth in this world, something that is real because it is real. We must ground our logic. Now I want to nerd out for a moment here, and I want you to stay with me. I'm going to give you some examples of what grounded logic will look like. And then we'll examine what happened in this Jesus and Pilate story. Here's some examples. The fact that water is wet is grounded in the fact that water has certain chemical properties. It is wet because it's wet. It's water. That's what it is. How about this one? The truth of this statement, Evan is standing, is grounded in the fact that I'm standing. Can you see that? Does that make sense to you? Is that true? Yes, we all know that. The fact that a conjunction, two things together, is true, is grounded in the fact that each of the things is true. You cannot say, well, it's kind of true. That's not what the truth is. The fact that a disjunction, two things that do not meet, is true, is grounded in the fact that at least one of those things is true. This is true, therefore this cannot be true. I am standing, therefore I am not sitting right now. They both cannot be true at the same time. My truth of me standing is right over your truth of me sitting. So who's wrong? The person that is wrong is wrong. And now we might know that instinctually. But here is a man who stands in front of the Son of God and asks the question, what is truth? What is it? Are the Jews right in this scenario? Am I right in washing my hands? Are you right that you're some king? What is truth? Is there actually a truth that trumps all these other things? So from Pilate's view, if this is an innocent man, then he is not deserving of the punishment, correct? We would say, obviously, that's true. What does he think of next? What goes in to allow him to pretend like he's innocent and send him away? Because it's not true that he should be punished, is it? And he knows it. He has to know it. What does he think of? Does he think of Pax Romana? I have to protect the peace of Rome. I have to do my job. That's what is right in this scenario. Is it moral relativism? Well, maybe they're kind of right. Maybe I'm kind of right. Maybe he's kind of right. I guess we'll never know. Today, one of the most popular ways of thinking is that the collective makes moral decisions, i.e., Murder is wrong because we have agreed that it is wrong. Have you ever heard that? If you say, why then, if there is no God, no thing to ground your morals, why would murder be wrong? The answer then would be because we have all agreed that it is wrong. And you will hear that. If you ask somebody who does not believe that there is a God to get through this, why then is put in anything that we know is wrong? Why is murder wrong? Well, because it harms people, and we have agreed that that is wrong. So the collective makes the moral decisions on what is right and wrong. So here's the question then. Has the collective ever been wrong? And if the answer is yes, which of course it is, then who was right in that scenario? If the collective was wrong, where was the right? There has to be a right somewhere if they were wrong. Well, it was out there somewhere. We don't know where it was at the time. The collective made a wrong decision, but does that make sense? Of course it doesn't make sense. Was it in history? Have people ever made wrong decisions in history? Have governments made wrong decisions? Movements made wrong decisions? Have individuals made wrong decisions? If the collective is in charge, what about the individual? If your truth is just as valid as my truth, what makes anything I decide to be good wrong? Because the collective is made up of individuals. So I might say, well, I can make sure the thing happens in society because I have the power to do so. And that's what it boils down to a lot of times. Jesus is going to be sacrificed here because Pilate has the power to make that decision. And so yet again, reinforcing his idea, might makes right. Who gets to decide what society does? It's going to be the ones who are strong enough to make that happen. So it will boil down to, again, might makes right. If I have the strength to do it, then we'll do it. So what will hold me to the right thing? What is right? What's true? Is this good or is it not? In a society, what is good, if it's determined by the people, it's going to be determined by the strong people, the ones who decide things. And that does not work. It doesn't work. Pilate stood in front of the truth. We're going to look at that. And he washed his hands and killed it. That's what moral relativism does. It kills what is true, and it absolves you of any responsibility. So let's look at who is God. Look at, actually, before we get to that, let's look at Exodus, verse 3, Exodus chapter 3, verse 14 and 15. This is Moses standing before God. And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Moreover, God said to Moses, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations. What does it mean, I am? He is the self-existing one. He is the answer, the ultimate ground of all logic. The conclusion of the matter is God. He has always existed forever, and he always will exist. He is the one who exists outside of time. If somebody is going to create the very universe in which we exist, they have to exist outside of that beforehand. A thing does not it is not, or is. You cannot say, well, the universe just is. That's just another argument for God. You say, well, the universe came about by a huge explosion. Nothing existed and then everything existed. That's another argument for miraculous powers of God. Well, the universe is infinitely long. That's another argument for God. Every argument that you get to about how this exists points back to a logical grounding of the fact that God has to exist outside of time for this to be real. And so God says to Moses, when telling him who he is, that's who he is. I am. I always have been. I always will be. Tell them that I am sent you. And then Jesus, the Son of God, comes to the earth. And he is there. Thomas asks him, show us the Father. Or his disciples ask him, show us the Father. And he says, have I not been with you so long and you don't know? If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. The reason why Jesus came to this earth was, one, to die for the sins of the world, and two, to show you God. You had to see in the flesh the self-existing one. John would write in John 1, John chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. He's talking about the Word of God. And then in verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So the aspect of God, truth, comes. The Word, creation itself, the one who made you, comes, and he is here in the flesh. He's here to show you God. As he said to Pilate, I came to bear witness of the truth. You have to see there is truth, the truth. Not your truth, not a maybe truth, the one that exists. The reason we all exist came to this earth. He came to show us love and mercy, showed us how to live, gave us a perfect example, died for us, and then raised from the dead to prove that he can do that he is self-existent. Who can raise himself from the dead? Nobody but God. And then he went back. Look at these statements. There are 7 I am statements in the book of John. Jesus uses the phrase I am. It makes the Jews very upset. First one is in John 6, 32 through 35, I am. Then Jesus said to them, most assuredly I say unto you, Moses did not give you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Then they said to him, Lord, give us this bread always. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. There's a lot of infinity going on in this passage. Jesus says, I am the bread. It will feed you forever, and it will last forever. There is nothing on this planet that works that way. It's God. Self-existent, all-powerful God. He also says, I am the light of the world. Chapter 8, verse 12. Then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. What is the point of light? Light illuminates. It shows. We open our eyes and we see. We see things that are before us, that are real. Things that we go, oh, there he is, there she is. I see it. That's the point. It is to illuminate the truth. But what truth gives us is life. It gives us life eternal. It gives us something more than what this world has to offer, which is death. He also says, I am the door of the sheep. John 10:7. Then Jesus said to them again, most assuredly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. A way of entering in. There is only one way of entering in. He would say, all who have come before are thieves and robbers. They're not real. They're not true. They are liars. So there can be a wrong and a right way, can't there? There can be things that are true and not true. Jesus was here as the truth to say, there is and there isn't. You have to pick the right one. He was also, a couple verses down, the good shepherd. Verse 11, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. Now, did he do that? Was he being true and honest there? He then goes and does the thing that he said he was going to do. Another example of how the embodiment of truth itself, self-existent truth, came, and when he said he was going to do something, he did it every single time. He gave his life for his sheep. And he's here to give life, that we may have life and have it more abundantly. That was the purpose. But you have to know the truth. You know, Satan as the adversary is the one who is the father of lies. He is the one who spreads lies over the earth and confuses and tricks you. He is in opposition to God the Father because he is everything that is false. He is a liar, and he's always been a liar. Isn't it amazing then that God, or Jesus, God the Son, is truth? He is also the resurrection and the life. Next chapter over, chapter 11, verse 25 and 26, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. And then he asks the question, do you believe this? Do you believe it's true, is what he's trying to ask. Do you believe it's true? Is this real to you? Well, if they say, well, that's not my truth, does Jesus say, okay, well, maybe you're right? No. That is the only truth. He is the resurrection. So you might say to Jesus, if you were standing in her shoes there, you might say, well, I've never seen somebody raised from the dead. That's a hard thing to believe that it's true. So what would he have to do to maybe prove it? Would he maybe raise somebody else from the dead? And then maybe raise himself from the dead? Isn't that amazing? God can do it. He can back it up. He can say, this is the truth. Let me show you. So he didn't leave us in darkness. He always illuminated what he was trying to say and to prove it, to make it happen before the people's eyes. He is also, he would say, I am. Look at verse 6 of John 14. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. He is the way. He's the door to the sheep. The way. He is the truth, not a truth, the truth. Because he is from the beginning, he grounds all logic. He makes it true. And because there is truth, and because of his resurrection, he gives life. And it is a spiritual life. Isn't that amazing that he says in chapter 11, though you may die, you shall live. You may pass away. You may put yourself to death for Christ and let Christ live in your stead. But ultimately, what comes from following the way, the truth, the life, it's life. This truth is eternal. And if you follow it, you will always have life. And then finally, John 15:1, Jesus said, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. So now I want you to put yourself in Pilate's shoes for a moment. We'll think about Pilate and Jesus. The truth stood in front of someone who would ask such a question. What is truth? Can there really be a truth? What is and what isn't? He had moral ambiguity, and he washed his hands and he let him die. He said, I find no fault in this man. And he delivered him up. Now, if I were in his shoes, what would I like to think that I would do? I would probably say, no, you can't kill him. He's an innocent man. And I'd sacrifice everything. I'd sacrifice my livelihood. I would make sure that Rome knew that I was against this unjust killing. I'd tell the Jews, I'd say, you can't kill him. He's innocent. And I'd get out there and I would, maybe, I don't know. Or maybe I would really feel the weight of the situation. And I would say, I need an out. I need an out. I need an out. What is truth? Now I get to do my job. These people get to be happy. They get what they want. And one man is the one who gets punished. One man. So for the collective, this all looks pretty good. We're going to sacrifice one guy. Everybody's going to be satisfied. If I believed in might makes right, or a moral relative view of the world, or the collective makes the decision, this would be the pragmatic decision to make. I'll sacrifice one guy. We satisfy the most number of people. And he did. And it worked from his standpoint. But was it evil to sacrifice a good man? Why? Why would that be wrong? Why would we say it is evil to murder people? If God does not exist, why? Because the group says it's wrong? Well, the group here is saying that it's right. So until the group thinks that it's wrong to kill, it's right to kill, and then when they think that it's right, I think I've got it figured out now. My morals are grounded. They can be whatever I want them to be. I can do whatever I want, as long as the most number of people are satisfied. And you will find that in your life, if that is how you ground your morality, the end is destruction. There will be no light and life, joy. There is going to be sadness and death. And here in this instance, it was so ambiguous. Remember, Pilate's wife said, I've had dreams of this man. I'm going to lose my mind, have nothing to do with him. And so you see the beginning of John, and all through the book of John, Jesus says, I am God in the flesh. I am here. I'm the truth. Take hold of my truth. And in this instance with Pilate, he says, those who are of the truth, hear my voice. There is a truth. So, what actions would you take? Would you look out for your own best interests and secure your job? Or would you do what is right according to a higher purpose? Would you make a decision based on something greater than yourself in order to do what is right and true? There's a verse in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1 through 4. Turn there. This is an interesting verse in relation to this. Paul writes to Timothy, and he says, I exhort, therefore, that first of all supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings, and for all that are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. Now that would include Pilate. You can pray for a guy like Pilate because we want to live a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. For this is good and acceptable in the sight of God, our Savior, who will have, watch this, all men to be saved and come unto the knowledge of the truth. You can pray for the betterment of someone like Pilate, who is a moral relativist. They're in charge, and we want to live peaceably because what is the goal? The goal is that he would be saved. The goal is that you would be saved. And that all of us, him and me, we would all come to the knowledge of the truth. For both sets of individuals, we are both expected to follow the truth. If you were in Pilate's shoes, I don't know what you would do. I don't know what I would do. But having understood the truth of Jesus the Christ, seeing his resurrection, his death for us, and his resurrection, it was unjust, but he did it anyways because he said it's the right thing to do. Would you do the right thing even in the face of adversity? Would you lay down your job? Would you lay down your status? Would you follow a higher purpose? That is the opportunity and the call that is for you this afternoon. You have the opportunity to make a decision. Paul would write, to put yourself to death, buried by baptism into death. And then you will be raised like Christ was in resurrection. You'll be raised to walk a new life, one that looks like Jesus the Christ. I am going to decide to do things that are good because the truth that grounds all reality said this is good. Those are the decisions I make. Not it's good for the most amount of people. I'll make that decision. Instead, I'll make the one that is true and right. You have the opportunity to make a true and good decision by being baptized into Christ and living a life with a higher purpose. You can do that right now. If you have not been doing that, you've been a Christian, you've fallen away, you want to come back, you want prayers, you want us to forgive you, you want God to forgive you. Whatever the need is, please come forward while together we stand and while we sing the invitation song.